It was so easy to picture a scenario where these horror movie casting decisions just didn't pan out. But you know what? All of us who doubted these edgy and unexpected casting picks were ultimately humbled in the end, because they didn't just work, they were great. I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Horror, and here are 10 horror movie casting choices that shouldn't have worked, but did. Number 10, Adrien Brody, Predators. When the casting for Robert Rodriguez's Predators was first announced, many questioned the decision to hire Adrien Brody for the lead role of mercenary Royce. Brody's wiry frame seemed to make him a strange fit to play the action hero role in a series previously led by certified badasses such as Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny Glover. Simply nothing we'd seen from Brody before this seemed to suggest he had what it took to play a tough guy that the audience would both believe and root for. But Brody proved just about everyone wrong and then some. Now sure, he was never going to be Arnie, I mean, who is? But Brody nevertheless packed on 25 pounds of muscle to become well-built soldier Royce, and absolutely convinced in the role. Beyond the physical requirements, Brody brought a charisma to the part that made him wholly persuasive as a ruthlessly pragmatic anti-hero, in turn proving himself to be an even more versatile performer than many already knew. Well played. Number 9, Elijah Wood, Maniac 2012. When a remake of William Lustig's classic 1980 slasher film Maniac was announced, many took umbrage with the casting of Frodo Baggins himself, Elijah Wood, in the role of serial killer Frank Zito. Even accepting that Wood had quite brilliantly played mute murderer Kevin in Sin City back in 2005, he simply seemed like a total far cry from Joe Spinell's decidedly sleazier, less baby-faced original iteration of Frank. And indeed, this was absolutely true. While Spinell's Frank is sweaty and visually repulsive, Wood's version is more cherubic and harmless looking. But that is very much the point of the remake. Wood's soft-spoken take allows him to more believably earn the trust of his future victims, and provides a sharp contrast with his horrifying acts of murder. Sure, purists of the original Maniac are always going to prefer Spinell's work, but Wood still did a phenomenal job in the remake, bringing a chilling yet wildly different energy to his interpretation, aided by the film's discomfortingly intimate first-person POV. Quick question before we go any further. Which actor shocked you the most in a horror movie role? Let me know in the comments down below. Shock me. Number 8, Kristen Wiig, Mother! Exclamation point. Throughout the 2010s, Kristen Wiig established herself as one of the most bankable and prolific comedians in Hollywood, and so it was a bit of a surprise to see her cast in a villainous role in Darren Aronofsky's 2017 horror film Mother. It just seemed tough to picture Wiig, known for her chirpy and neurotic characters, in a bevy of comedies and dramas, bringing menace to a straight horror film. And while Wiig's role is ultimately fairly small, she absolutely makes the most of her screen time as the terrifying publicist of him, especially in the film's third act when she starts ordering the cultist to perform mass executions, and even kills several hostages herself. Given that the publicist is initially presented as a more agreeable character, the darker turn quite perfectly subverts the expectations of what audiences believe they're getting from a Kristen Wiig role, resulting in the single most surprising performance of her entire career to date. Number 7, Danny McBride, Alien Covenant. Many heads were turned when Danny McBride was cast in the role of Chief Pilot Tennessee in Alien Covenant. After all, at the time, McBride was largely associated with vulgar comedies, typically alongside his good pals Seth Rogen and James Franco, and so he simply seemed like an odd fit for the generally very serious world of the Alien franchise. It didn't help that Franco himself had a small role at the start of Covenant, only making McBride stick out all the more as a result. But McBride actually ended up being being one of the more likable and memorable characters in the whole movie, ditching the ribald a-hole shtick he's best known for, and proving to be a capable, sympathetic comrade of protagonist Daniels. Perhaps it might have been trickier to buy McBride as a scientist, but as a more rough-edged pilot who also happens to have a heart of gold, he actually ended up being kinda perfect, you know? It's just a shame the planned sequel to Covenant never happened. And considering the grim cliffhanger it ended on, it's unlikely we'll be seeing Tennessee ever again. But for what it's worth, I still think Covenant is hugely underrated. Number 6, Dakota Johnson, Suspiria 2018. When it was announced that Luca Guadagnino would be remaking Dario Argento's giallo classic Suspiria, there was much speculation on who would be cast to play the new version of Susie Banyan, previously portrayed so memorably by Jessica Harper. Few would have bet money on Dakota Johnson being cast as the lead, because even though she'd worked with Guadagnino before on his 2015 drama A Bigger Splash, she was far better known for her role as Anna Steele in the 50 Shades trilogy. To many, it simply seemed like Johnson brought too much baggage from that franchise to this role. And there were also those who doubted her ability to fully commit to such a challenging part. But Johnson gave a terrific performance as Susie, showing the full extent of her acting chops as a tenacious dancer who becomes ensnared in the trap of a witch's coven. Most laudably, she holds her own on screen against bona fide acting lioness Tilda Swinton, immediately dismissing any and all accusations that she's an actress with severely limited range. She smashed it, you know. Right, if you're having fun looking at these horror movie casting choices that should not have worked, but did, then hit that subscribe button for even more What Culture horror videos just like this one. Well, not just like this one, they'll be a little bit different and on other subjects, but you get what I mean. Number 5, Sean William Scott, Bloodline. As long as he shall live, Sean William Scott will forever be most associated with his character Steve Stifler from the American Pie franchise, a relentlessly immature dude bro if there ever was one. And so there was much surprise when Scott was cast as the lead in 2018's horror film Bloodline, where he portrays Evan, a family man who moonlights as a serial killer who targets abusive parents. He seemed like a total 180 from any role that Scott had played in his career prior. And to be clear, there's no darkly comedic or satirical aspect to the film. It is horror played totally straight. But Scott surprised a lot of people here, giving a performance of impressive restraint, his simmering intensity making it shockingly easy to forget about Steve Stifler altogether, and that takes some doing. Scott's success here evidently gave him a taste for the genre too, as he followed it up in 2023 by playing the loathsome leader of an alt-right hate group in The Wrath of Becky, where he similarly rose to the occasion. Number 4, Anna Lynn McCord, Excision. So, Excision is a 2012 psychological horror film revolving around Pauline, a disturbed teen outcast with aspirations of entering the medical field, who has bad skin, greasy hair, and terrible posture. One might have been tempted to laugh when the very beautiful, not remotely unattractive Anna Lynn McCord was cast in the role of Pauline then, especially given Hollywood's ridiculous tendency to cast conventionally good-looking people as ugly characters. Yet McCord, best known for playing ultra-confident, put-together young women both before and since being cast in Excision, absolutely did the work to convince as Pauline. She was certainly aided by the stellar work of the film's makeup team, who successfully made McCord look as plain as possible, though ultimately it is McCord herself who strips away her typical moxie to play a more subdued, mousy character. McCord plays aggressively against type here to perfection, in turn delivering one of the most criminally underrated horror performances of the 2000s so far. Now, Excision certainly isn't for the faint of stomach, you have been warned, but absolutely worth watching for McCord's superb work above all else. Number 3, Quentin Tarantino, From Dusk Till Dawn. Though Quentin Tarantino quickly established himself to be one hell of a writer-director, his early projects also demonstrated the sure limitations of his acting, where he was generally better suited to small cameo roles, such as playing Jimmy in Pulp Fiction. There was concern then when Tarantino was cast to play a lead role in a horror film he wrote for director Robert Rodriguez, From Dusk Till Dawn. Tarantino ended up playing Richie Gecko, a psychopathic, murderous criminal, And nothing we'd seen from Tarantino prior to the film's release suggested that he could capably stand toe-to-toe with a screen partner like George Clooney, who played Richie's more cool-minded brother, Seth. But credit where it's due, Tarantino wrote a part that played quite perfectly to his sensibilities. That is to say, Tarantino's a bit of a strange guy, isn't he? And the role of Richie simply allowed him to crank that weirdness to 1000, letting his freak flag fly in every which way. Tarantino's so damn good in the film, even, that we'll overlook the fact he blatantly wrote a scene for himself to suck on Salma Hayek's toes. Yeah, make of that what you will. Number 2, Aubrey Plaza, Child's Play 2019. Though many Child's Play fans were disappointed that 2019's remake didn't invite Brad Dourif back to voice Chucky, instead replacing him with Mark Hamill, there were just as many eyebrows raised over the casting of Aubrey Plaza as Karen Barkley, the mother of protagonist Andy. A lot of fans felt that Plaza was miscast in the role, in large part because they perceived the then 34-year-old actress as looking too young to play the mother of a 12-year-old boy. And then there were those who simply failed to believe that Plaza, still most firmly associated with her ice-cold April Ludgate character from Parks and Recreation at the time, would convince as a loving mother at all. Well, you know what? Plaza absolutely nailed it. First and foremost, young mothers do exist, and the film absolutely leans into that, with Plaza playing a more sardonic iteration of Karen, who nevertheless cares deeply for her son. It's easy to see why folks had their doubts, but considering the many versatile performances Plaza has given across genres in recent years, should we ever have really doubted her? No, we should not. Number 1, Klaus Kinski, Nosferatu the Vampyre. It was hardly a surprise when Klaus Kinski was cast to play Count Dracula in Werner Herzog's 1979 Nosferatu reimagining, Nosferatu the Vampyre. Offered up a considerably more sympathetic depiction of the vampire than in all prior adaptations of either Nosferatu or Bram Stoker's Dracula, presented here as a lonely, tragically doomed figure. And this clashed somewhat with the casting of Kinski, who was well known for being an unstable tyrant on film sets, enough that Herzog even considered murdering him during production of the 1972 film Aguirre, The Wrath of God. It seemed paradoxical to cast an actor so publicly known for their unsympathetically rage-filled outbursts in the role of a decidedly sympathetic monster. Even accepting that actors are hired to play characters far from their own personalities all the time, persuading the audience to root for Kinski's Dracula just seemed like a bit of a long shot, really. But Kinski was actually able to successfully disappear into the role, likely aided by an extensive makeup transformation, ensuring that his signature intensity only enhanced the emotional anguish of his performance. Have you enjoyed this What Culture Horror list? Well, carry on your YouTube journey with us by tapping on another What Culture Horror video right here. Have fun, see you soon.